I'm Ben Housen and welcome to CNN. Today we are discussing the reform budget for 2018. Speaking with me today are Jessica Drapshan, Andrew Lanham, and Maggie Berry. Unfortunately, Seth Clemente could no longer make it due to a pressing government issue. So let's get down to business. First, let's talk about the goals of this new budget.
I'll take that one. The national debt is around $19.98 trillion, and it is ever increasing, or so it seems. Meanwhile, the deficit for the past 5 decades has been increasing at an incredible rate and is currently at $587 billion. Our primary goal for 2018 is to eliminate or considerably shrink the deficit by cutting spending by $294 billion and increasing the revenue by the same amount. We believe our national debt will soon begin to hurt the economy as people around the world begin to doubt our credit. The global economy depends on our ability to maintain our position as the world's most secure creditor. Specifically, by decreasing the deficit, the government will presumably be able to invest more money in domestic infrastructure projects, which is beneficial for U.S. companies and services. Additionally, it's better to act now because reducing the deficit now is easier to deal with than potentially defaulting on our debt in the future.
Well, before we get into that, let's take a look at what the budget is like today. We have Maggie Berry and Jess here to give us a brief overview about it.
Well, if we take a look at this graph here, we see that in 2016, the proposed $3.6 trillion spending budget was mainly allocated to Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, costing us over $2.4 trillion. All of this is known as mandatory spending, which is spending on certain programs that is required by law. Most of the remaining money is directed towards discretionary spending, which is spending through a government-issued appropriated bill. Discretionary spending tends to be optional. For example, $634.2 billion, which is 16% of the national budget, is spent on military.
And if we shift to revenue, in 2016, the revenue amounted to $2.99 trillion, 56% of which comes from income taxes. Income taxes levied over 100 million American households each year.
Okay, so this plan sounds very ambitious considering how difficult it is to change the smallest of issues of government. How exactly are we going to rid ourselves of the deficit, and what are the implications of these changes?
The most eye-opening part of position is our stance on legalizing marijuana. The tax revenue of this new industry would help support our fight against a large deficit. Judging by the gains seen in Colorado in 2016, this would generate about $7.8 billion in revenue. While some believe this would contribute to the drug culture, we would like to add that the drug culture has not faltered once in the year since the war on drugs. It is still very much alive and well.
There are, of course, implications on legalizing marijuana. Studies have shown that in states where marijuana is legalized, there is a higher percentage of people who abuse the drug. Additionally, many people do not want to be part of a society where the recreational usage of drug is common. However, in a 2015 nationwide poll, 58% of Americans were pro-legalization of cannabis, and 84% of Americans were in favor of the legalization of marijuana for medicinal purposes. Politically, more liberal states tend to lean towards the legalization of marijuana, and the more conservative states remain against it. Also, initiative and referendum laws may prohibit the legalization of marijuana in many states. However, as more states legalize marijuana and reap the economic benefits of the industry, we believe that the government will realize the monetary opportunities that they are missing. Therefore, we stress that the United States government legalize marijuana in order to drastically increase the revenue.
Thank you, Maggie and Andrew. So that only gives you $7.8 billion in revenue. So where do you plan on getting or cutting the other $579 billion?
Our biggest change in the budget resides in changing the Social Security age from 62 to 70. When Social Security was established in 1935, the average life expectancy in the U.S. was 61.7 years. However, in 2012, the average life expectancy in the United States was 78.74 years. Not only has life expectancy increased drastically, but the mental and physical health of the people has allowed them to be valuable to the workforce for longer amounts of time. We would not be changing the structure of the Social Security tax rate. However, after the raise has been in place for a certain time frame, amendments are definitely welcome. In 2016, $880 billion were spent on Social Security. approximately 50% of Social Security recipients are in the 62 to 69 age range. If we were to raise the age of Social Security recipients to 70, then we would reduce the money allocated to Social Security by 50%, meaning that the United States government would be saving $440 billion per year. While this cut does not entirely get us out of the deep of the $580 billion deficit, it definitely allows us to see some sun.
Okay, so you changed the Social Security age from 62 to 70. You think about life expectancy, revenue, and even the mental and physical health of Americans. So you must be wondering what's missing. Why has this not been done? What are the implications of raising the Social Security age in America? This is primarily answered by the benefits that come with the Social Security age and the large disrupt it will have on the millions of Americans that are relying on it. Raising the Social Security age means cutting benefits, no matter when you file. A higher retirement age means that an early retiree gets a deeper reduction and a delayed retiree gets a smaller bonus. If it rose to 70, the cuts would be nearly 20%. With that, nearly half of retirement beneficiaries claim benefits at age 62. Some of these beneficiaries, especially those with lower earnings, are in poor health but don't meet the Social Security disability insurance criteria for disability benefits. If the retirement age were 70, a retiree at age 62 would receive only 57% of his or her fully monthly benefit. What does this mean? This change would lead to an eruption of protests and a big change on the benefits that the United States government promised me.
Thank you, Maggie and Jess. Now, I know the United States military has a huge budget of $597 billion. Are there any plans to cut parts of this military budget for 2018, or will it remain untouched?
The military budget is part of the discretionary spending that goes towards the Department of Defense. In 2016, the United States spent about $618.7 billion on the military, making it the largest recipient of discretionary spending portion of the budget. In relation to other nations, the United States has a military budget that exceeds the combined budget of China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, the United Kingdom, India, France, and Japan. As far as imports and exports, the United States spends around $759 million on arms imports and receives around $6.2 billion from its exports. Therefore, we are making a profit and should not cut the production of weapons. Similar to 2014 Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel's restricting approach, we propose to cut the military budget by 5% by eliminating pay raises, reducing the housing allowances, and limiting the amount of money spent on new military equipment. We must ask ourselves, is this necessary? By cutting the military budget merely by 5% or less, we will decrease our budget spending by around $31 billion.
The rest of discretionary spending, minus the military, is a small portion of the budget and is allocated to thousands of programs that address multiple needs of citizens. Although the military budget has decreased due to the withdrawal of troops from Iraq and Afghanistan, it is still much greater than it needs to be. There's been public speculation on the public waste aspect of military spending, after a report was issued that $150 million were spent on villas in Afghanistan for U.S. officials over the course of 1 year. Cutting the military budget is a controversial subject, with one side disclosing the economic inefficiencies of the Pentagon and the other side exploiting the demands of national security and the military. Politically, promoters of cutting the defense budget state that it would rebalance the United States in a healthy manner with regards to foreign policy. If we are to cut the military budget, it is important to keep in mind that the military does allow us to feel safe in our beds when we go to sleep, and it is the office of some of our nation's most venerable men and women.
Maggie and Jess. Now, I know that all the people at home right now are going to be wondering how this will affect taxes. So how will the 2018 budget be handling taxes? Andrew, could you please further explain?
Sure. Warren Buffett, one of the most well-known investors, is famous for claiming that he pays more taxes than his secretary. For those of you that don't know why that is, it is because of the structure of the capital gains tax. Capital gains are investments in stocks, bonds, resources, etc. that appreciate in value from the time you bought them to when you sold them. As of now, long-term capital gains are taxed at 15% compared to income taxes, which are progressively taxed up to around 40%. Because capital gains tax is usually usually represent anywhere from 2 to 3% of the federal government's total tax revenue for a given year, or 4 to 7% of the revenue collected for individual income taxes. If we were to increase the capital gains tax rate by 10% for each tax bracket on an assumed tax revenue of $3 trillion with an individual income tax revenue of roughly $1.5 trillion, that would provide an additional $10.5 billion, which would further decrease the deficit. However, increasing capital gains does not come without opposing views. One of the concerns with the increasing capital gains tax rate is that it theoretically de-incentivizes people to invest. However, given our plan to cut funds from the Social Security budget, people will be required to invest in order to create a nest egg for retirement, which will further incentivize people to invest their money. The primary political implication is that fiscally conservative people will oppose this, as much of their income is through investments.
Thank you all so much for taking your time out to do this. It's been a pleasure.